Ryan Ruth, the man accused of attempting to assassinate then-candidate Donald Trump at his Florida golf course, sought to obtain military-grade weapons from a Ukrainian contact as part of his alleged assassination plot. That's according to federal prosecutors in the case, who say among the weapons Ruth was looking to obtain was a rocket launcher.
That news comes as a new survey from Rutgers and the Network Contagion Research Institute shows more than a third of U.S. residents think the assassination of President Trump would be at least somewhat justified. Take a look at these numbers. 39% of respondents said Trump's murder would be at least somewhat justified. That jumps to 55% among respondents that self-identify as left of center. Similarly, a little less than a third of the respondents said that Elon Musk's assassination would be justified. Nearly 40% said destroying Tesla dealerships is partially acceptable. Again, those numbers take a significant jump among respondents that do identify themselves as left of center, 49 and then 58% respectively. It's important to note what these graphics don't show. More than 60% of those polled said political violence against both Trump and Musk was not at all justified, but it shows a troubling trend perhaps. In their study synopsis, the NCRI said the results show, quote, an emergent assassination culture grounded in far-left authoritarianism and increasingly normalized in digital discourse, which is a very provocative claim. Now, I know I should be saying that this just proves there's all those left-wing radicals out to kill
everybody.
Our beautiful president, our glorious president, our perfect president. But I actually don't like ascribing political motivation to violence. I think unlike this group, which I don't know very well, but unlike them, I actually don't often see clear links between political rhetoric and actual real-world violence. I always like to remind people that we are not a country that sees a lot of political violence. We are a country that sees a lot of violence, but a shockingly small amount of violence can be attributed to discernible political objectives. That has not always been the case. We did live through a period of time where there were assassinations, not actually just in the U.S., but all over Europe, all over the globe, of political leaders at the turn of the previous century. And we've had presidents be assassinated, but there is not a lot of political violence. And then even violence that is sometimes sounds maybe quasi-political is crazy people. Crazy people will latch on to whatever the rhetoric is out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were influenced or radicalized by the rhetoric. They're just saying, they say crazy things about, if you hear crazy people on the street, they'll be muttering obscenities about Jews and blacks and gays and women, and then if they stab someone, but it's not actually politically motivated. It's not because Bernie Sanders said something or because Donald Trump said something. That's just how crazy people behave. Do you see what you know what I mean?
No, I do think that's largely a fair point. We started off this segment talking about Ryan Ruth, whose political views are actually not all that clear. Obviously
they're not clear, and they're a little discernible than usual, if anything. But they're not clear.
They're not clear. He claims to have voted for Trump in 2016, then to have grown disappointed with him.
Betrayed on the Ukraine front?
The Ukraine thing. He's very pro-Ukraine, so it's not really all that clear. Look, I don't want to leave myself or you open to the accusation of minimizing the threat of political violence. Political violence is wrong. It's wrong from whichever quarter it comes, and all of that. Now, one of the things that to your point, that I found kind of curious about this study is, separate from the issue of political violence, I think, we would do our audience a service by advising them to look pretty carefully at polls and the way they're constructed, regardless of where they come from. Because often pollsters ask leading questions. And in this particular case, it's a strangely constructed poll. What they ask people is, on a 1 to 7 scale, how justified would it be to kill these people? And it's like, how do you arrive at a 3? If you say, is it justified to kill politician X? 1 to 7. Either it's justified or it's not. And then they take everyone who goes, so 1 I think is not at all justified, and then they add up all the other figures and say, well, people are open to the killing of these people. I guess they are, but it reminds me a little bit of, magicians who can often do card tricks and try to sort of bias you towards which card you choose by the way they offer the options. So I'm kind of skeptical in that respect.
I see. And you can always get, in poll results, you always get some level of, like, is Barack Obama a cactus?
Right.
And you don't get 0%, you get like 22%. I totally made this up, by the way.
No, I know.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
There's just people who didn't understand it, or,
And I also love in the crosstabs where you have, like, 3% of hardline Democrats are big Donald Trump fans or whatever. Like, all the contradictions emerge those sort of weird ways. Now, I do think that there is rhetoric in American politics at the moment that is inflammatory. You and I have, I think, very different views as to how that should be policed or not policed. I do worry about a linkage between a very toxic political culture leading to acts of violence, but I'm just not, there's a very sensationalist headline on this poll that I'm not entirely sure its findings really bear out.
Well, and I have previously criticized a lot of sensationalist headlines pegged to reports on rising hateful rhetoric from places like the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Anti-Defamation League, and so on. When you start to look at these, how they're counting hate. There was a report from the first Trump administration that came out by one of these activist groups trying to coin the Trump effect, which is saying that Trump's nasty rhetoric about immigrants was leading to a spike in bullying incidents in schools. It was having a K through 12 effect. I'm like, okay, and I look at this, and this was based on members of this organization, supporters of this organization, writing in to say, oh, my kid got bullied by some MAGA hat wearing kid. Like, okay, well, this is utterly unscientific. This has no scientific basis whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then, and hate crimes are another very confusing category, because depending on which database you're relying on, police departments are not obligated to share this information. So sometimes they were not sharing it in a previous cycle, and then they decided to start sharing this information. So it looks like there's a massive spike when it's really like they're actually just, you're paying more attention to a problem and making it look like the problem's getting worse when actually you're just tabulating it better than you used to.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue too.
Well, I mean, not to take us completely off topic, but I mean, I would make that argument in relation to autism and the to my mind, fictitious link that is often made by RFK Jr. type people between vaccines and autism. I think, when something is more diagnosed, the numbers rise, and then gives rise sometimes to false theories about causation.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not disagreeing with you necessarily. Right, we didn't have language to describe this kind of behavior. Looking at people used to suffer from all sorts of maladies that were just kind of under discussed. Actually, in terms of the mental health crisis getting worse, I think there is something to the idea that you used to feel a kind of social shame to talking about depression or anxiety or things, and so that was just kept internally. So where now it looks like we've had an explosion in mental health problems, but people just still had mental health problems. Kept them. I mean, think of people who went through, World War II or the Vietnam War. Even the Vietnam War people, we started to have a much better understanding of how the post-traumatic stress and how that was impacting people. But all our grandparents who went through World War I or World War II, they self-medicated with a stiff whiskey every night, right? They still had mental health problems because of those experiences.
Absolutely. My late grandmother had a lovely euphemism. She used to talk about people whose nerves were bothering them, which was really some form of mental illness.
Now we've given so much social permission to discuss so openly our various mental health problems. I would argue it may have even gone so far as to be encouraging people to associate themselves with mental illness in a way to gain social status or even a victim hierarchy among some particularly like left activist circles that I think is a very unhealthy tendency that you mostly see on campuses, but it's not good.
And on Twitter.
And on Twitter, very much so. Coming up next, are the Obamas breaking up? Let's hear what the former First Lady Michelle Obama said about rumors about an upcoming divorce. Stay with us.